Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for being here tonight. What a great crowd here tonight. Welcome to the Andrew Breitbart Freedom Center at the Heartland Institute for an important discussion on your Second Amendment rights. I'm Kyle Michaely, and I am the project manager of constitutional reform at the Heartland Institute. The main mission of the Heartland Institute is to develop, discover, and promote free market solutions to the world's social and economic problems. For close to 30 years, we were located in downtown Chicago in the heart of the financial district. Last year, we moved to beautiful Arlington Heights to where we are today at the Andrew Breitbart Freedom Center. If you like coming to these events, we hope you become a Heartland donor. Your financial support makes programs like these possible. We hope you join us for two upcoming events at the Heartland Institute that are coming up. First, we got Stephen Moore of the Heritage Foundation and also a native Chicagoan who will speak about fueling freedom, exposing the left's mad war on energy, which is going to take place next Monday at the historic Union League Club in downtown Chicago. The other event, which is always a favorite event of ours on the annual events calendar at Heartland, is the 32nd Annual Benefit Dinner, which features P.J. O'Rourke. The event will take place on September 15th at the Cotillion in Palatine, Illinois. For more information or to register for these events, please visit heartland.org. Everyone in the room knows that the Second Amendment is a very important civil right. The founding fathers envisioned this right to protect citizens from all enemies, foreign and domestic. The far left is now working overtime to take away this right. All you have to do is look at the recent news coverage in Orlando and the recent atrocity that just happened there, in which the left is now finding their calling card to ban guns. The best example of how gun control inhibits the citizens' right to self-defense is Australia. The land down under 20 years ago banned automatic and semi-automatic rifles in response to a mass shooting in Tasmania, Australia, which killed 30 people. America faces the prospect of Australian-style gun control if the far left is successful. Now I want to introduce the moderator for tonight's event. He's our project manager of education transformation, but is also a former correctional officer and longtime gun owner. Ladies and gentlemen, Lenny Jarrett.
Thanks, Kyle. I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. And I want to thank everybody online that's watching online. Make sure as the night goes, as our speakers speak, if you have a question, write it down, and we will have a Q&A after both speakers have spoken online. Please go in the chat room and write down your questions there, and we'll fit in as many questions as we possibly can. Also want to give your regrets. Dave McSweeney could not make it tonight with all the stuff going on in Springfield, everything kind of stuff not going on in Springfield sometimes, but the battle back and forth is kind of an issue, so he wasn't able to make it tonight. So I'd like to introduce both of our speakers. The first is John Bach. He is the executive director of Gun Save Life. He's been a firearms instructor for about 20 years. He has taught thousands of adults and young people firearm safety. He's an NRA certified instructor in rifle, pistol, and personal protection in the home. He's also a U.S. Riflemen's Association rifle and pistol instructor. He is an Appleseed instructor in training. He is also a Live Free USA survival instructor. And as the COO of GSL Defense Training, he has trained over 1% of all concealed carry owners in Illinois. Our second speaker tonight is Mike Ryu. He is the CEO of Red Dot Arms in Lake Villa. He's been around firearms all his life and received his first gun 44 years ago. He is also a certified chief safety officer and certified to teach all NRA courses. Mike was actually born in Canada, so he knows well what it's like not to be able to have the right to carry a firearm to protect himself and his family. He's only been protected by the Second Amendment for about 20 years. Mike established Red Dot to teach his fellow citizens how to safely exercise their Second Amendment rights. So, Mike, you can go ahead and take a seat, and I'll introduce Mike. Have John come on up, and he will be our first speaker. He'll speak for about 15, 20 minutes. Then Mike will speak, and then we will start our Q&A. Thank you, John.
Thanks, everybody, for coming out tonight on this nice, warm evening. Everybody can think cool pear-shaped thoughts before they go back out into the world to go back home tonight. But as he said, my name's John Bach. I hail from down in central Illinois. I currently live in Bloomington. Been involved in Gun Save Life now for just shy of 20 years. I was the vice president there for about 14 years. Moved up to president back in 2010. And in the course of the 2 terms I served as president, we quadrupled our membership. We increased the number of cities that Gun Save Life meets in from 1 to 4 each month, and the growth has continued on from there. While the Illinois Council Against Handgun Violence was firing their lobbyist in Springfield, closing their Springfield office, and ratcheting back the staff in their Chicagoland office, Gun Save Life was growing in membership. Our sign program has grown to be seen, and 600,000 people a day see our highway signs that we're famous for. Highway signs like dial 911 and I'm on hold, sure wish I had that gun I sold. Those kind of slogans are what we're all about. We're very aggressive in our activism. We irritate a lot of people on the left, but that's just the way it goes. Sometimes I say I'm a professional poo stirrer, but it is what it is. A lot of people don't like what we do and how we do it, but we're very effective at getting our message out. In fact, we've got a Gun News magazine that we publish about 20,000 copies of each and every month, which is more than many of the daily newspapers down in my neck of the woods. Our website's seen by over 6,500 unique visitors each and every day, which isn't bad considering we've only been doing that for about 3 or 4 years. And our most famous news splash was coming up to Chicago to sell a bunch of old rusty junk to the do-gooders in Chicago. We came up with 65 guns, sold them for $6,240 to the do-gooders in Chicago. We took that money and we sent young people to an NRA youth shooting camp. We bought guns and gave them to children. And it was a good day. We scored international publicity with that. It went all the way to the BBC. Russia Today picked up on it. Of course, all the domestic news outlets covered it, and it's been a good time for us since. In fact, just a few short weeks ago, we came back up to this year's Chicago gun buyback. And lo and behold, every white person that showed up with a gun was turned away, while black people with similar quality and type and number of guns were welcomed in with open arms, proving once again that Chicago, to this day, strives to take guns out of the hands of law-abiding black folks in the city of Chicago, while the white folks are welcome and encouraged, or whatever you want to call it, to have their own guns. It's amazing that profiling continues on today. I thought profiling was a thing of the past, but I guess it's okay if you come from a certain perspective when it comes to politics. It was a mayor's office liaison that was the person making the decisions for who got to stay and who got to go. But the police officers there were very, very nice. Married to Wendy, she's wonderful, got a ferret at home, so, I'm kind of a well-rounded person. I say I'm married to guns first and Wendy second, but I say that outside of her earshot anyway. I will say, though, I am a terrible boat driver. I've lost a lot of guns in boating accidents, everywhere from the Gulf of Mexico to Lake Michigan to now Lake Bloomington. So don't ask me how many guns I have, because I really don't know, because the whole lot of them are in the bottom of the lake, so it just is what it is. But when it comes to guns and gun rights, with decisions come consequences. Ignoring the proven life-saving benefits of firearms ownership comes with or potentially life-changing consequences. And when it comes to self-defense, a gun's something you may never need, but if the occasion comes that you do need it, you'll need it very badly. If you have to wonder about that, just ask a guy by the name of George Armstrong Custer about having the right gun to defend your life in time of violent attack. Of course, we don't plan on needing a gun ever, but we don't plan on needing a fire extinguisher or fire smoke alarms either, but we still have them everywhere we are around us. In fact, looking around, I see all kinds of fire and life safety stuff hanging around us as we speak. But it's kind of ironic that we don't encourage the same for life-saving tools that people can carry on their person. The prudent person owns, a fire extinguisher. They also own the life-saving tools to keep their family safe until police can show up in the event of an attack. I know a lot of people say that the American gun culture is unique, to put it kindly. The people in Europe, especially Great Britain and some other countries, find our gun culture here in America just uniquely American and just bizarre in their minds. But, the bottom line is that gun control, at least in our country, has been used for rather nefarious purposes for many, many years. In fact, we like to say that gun control is racist, classist, and sexist. And we don't support those things, and most people don't support those things. But at the same time, we don't want to manipulate people with falsehoods and fears and emotions. We want people to understand the truth so they'll all be better citizens out there in the grand world of things. And of course, correlation does not equal causation. And I'll give you an example of that. Here in America, we are number one with a gun. The Wikipedia says that we have 90 guns per 100,000 or per 100 residents, or the equivalent thereof. And I think their numbers are badly mistaken, because since 1998 alone, we've sold somewhere in the neighborhood of about 250 million guns in this country. And before that, you can't tell me that there were only 25 or 50 million guns in circulation. I would say there's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 million guns in America today. But we're number one in the world in terms of per capita gun ownership. Does that correlate to violent crime? Well, certainly the left would have you think it would be, because they say, oh my gosh, the easy availability of guns leads to this gun violence. Well, not the case, because if that was the case, America would be number one in the world with homicide rates per capita, would they not? But in fact, Honduras is the number one nation with homicide rates with 90 per 100,000. U.S. doesn't make the top 5 or even the top 10. In fact, the U.S. didn't make the top 100. The United States is near the top of the bottom half of nations with, what is our murder rate? 4.7 per 100,000. Good old Murderville, USA. We came in at number 111 out of 218 nations and territories. And that is in large part because it's skewed by the Democrat-controlled, highly gun-controlled cities that have outrageous homicide rates, such as Detroit at 54.6. In fact, if Detroit were its own nation, it would come in, what, number 2, just ahead of Venezuela? Ponder that. And you think Detroit's bad. Chicago, as bad as it is only 18.5 per 100,000. Well, let's look at the other end of the spectrum, Plano, Texas. Good old Plano, Texas. It's otherwise known as Gun Nut Central to some folks. Almost every home has a whole collection of guns: shotguns, rifles, scary guns, big guns, long guns, old guns, new guns, machine guns. Yes, they have machine guns. Handguns, you name it. They got 45s, 38s. They got everything. AKs by the back door, ARs in the closet. They got 22s for the kids to practice with. They got jackknives, folding knives. Heck, they even got sharp sticks and pointy rocks. Do they have a problem there? No. Plano, Texas has a capital murder rate of 0.4 per 100,000. In fact, if the entire Team USA had the Plano, Texas murder rate with the great availability of guns there, we would be number 211 of 218 nations and territories. That would be 40% or half the rate of Germany and 40% of the UK. Of course, UK, they don't have any guns, or so they tell you. So maybe it's not the guns. Maybe it's something else. The homicide rate in America, while guns have nearly doubled in our country, has dropped by 50% since 1994. We don't have, on the whole, a widespread problem with violent crime in America. We've got a problem with widespread violent crime in the big cities. And that's caused, at least I would submit, caused by the Chicago and our poor justice system here, and also poor family upbringing, the single-parent families. I'll give you a couple examples. Florida. today has the lowest firearm violent crime rate in that state's history. They got lots of sunshine, they got lots of tourists, they got lots of beaches. They don't have a lot of gun crime. And there's a reason for that, because they got 10-20 life. You pull out a gun in the commission of a violent crime, you get 10 extra years added to your sentence on top of whatever the sentence was for the crime you committed. You discharge the firearm, 20 years. You hit somebody, doesn't matter if you kill them or not, it's 25 to life at the judge's discretion on top of the sentence for the crime that you discharged that firearm and wounded somebody. Let me contrast Chicago. In Chicago, if you're one of 3 young punks that commits a drive-by shooting firing over 50 rounds at a public park filled with people, wounding 2 or 3 individuals, you get charged with a Class 4 felony, 1 to 3 years in prison upon conviction. In Chicago, if you're a drunk woman on a busy thoroughfare in the middle of the night, just getting out of the bar, drunk, got a gun in your purse without a license, without a FOID card, without much of anything. In fact, I'm not sure, but I think she might have been a felon. She was arrested because there was a YouTube video of it. People saw it on YouTube, her popping off 5 shots on a busy street trying to shoot at somebody and kill him. Police found her, charged her with a misdemeanor. In Florida, all of these individuals will be gone for a generation. In Chicago, they're out before the paperwork's done. Closer to home, it's not, closer to home to me, it's not just in Chicago, it's downstate as well. In Normal, Illinois, a home invasion in 2014. Guy sticks his gun in some guy's ear in the wrong apartment. Where's the drugs? Where's the money? The guy's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Bad guy goes away. Sentenced to 4 years. A home invasion. He came in this guy's apartment, kicked the door in, stuck a gun in his ear, threatened to kill him. They gave him 4 years. He was out in 4 months. I like to say that prison time in Illinois is like dog years in reverse. It's pathetic. And that's the reason we got a problem. The people that are released early, 2/3 of them are rearrested for felony within 3 years. Oh, that guy that got out in 4 months, he's since been arrested for 2 more felonies. Gun dealer licensing. What a joke that was. The gun dealer licensing plan. Because the feds don't have enough resources, we'll have the state of Illinois start licensing dealers. As if the state of Illinois has lots of extra money, time, and manpower to enforce some regulations. All that was an effort to allow local authorities to inspect these gun dealers to no end, to harass them out of business, to charge them a whole bunch of fees and everything, and to penalize or restrict, however you want to look at it, the average gun owner to 9 transactions per year. If you trade a gun with Biking for Babies here in front, if I trade a gun with him, that counts as 2 of my 9 transactions for the year. If I go over the 9 transactions without a serious reason, like a financial need or something along these lines, I go to prison. If I do go over that because of the financial need or some narrowly defined aspects in this proposed bill, then I can't buy or sell another gun for 3 years. So much for your Second Amendment rights. The good news is, Americans for Responsible Solutions and our friends Gabby Gifford and Mark Kelly, who just recently teamed up with a disgraced criminal former general to launch another new anti-gun control group that's going nowhere. They got their big splash got splashed out by the Orlando incident. But he came to Illinois. He insulted all the local gun control folks, telling them, we'll show you how to do it. We know how to do gun control. You've got a supermajority of Democrats in the House and Senate in Illinois. You should be able to pass gun control, no problem. They lied to the legislators and the legislative staffs. They told them they had the votes to pass it. When it went up for a vote, they got 43 votes. They needed 60 for passage. They got 43. They pissed off a whole lot of people in the Illinois General Assembly. That was after 7 revisions on their bill to gather additional votes. 7 revisions, 43 votes, a huge embarrassment for Gabby Giffords and that bunch of clowns. The reason we as gun rights activists are winning this social war, if you want to call it, is because we've got freedom on our side. The dedication to the cause of people like us, and probably many of you, is the reason that we still have our guns. If it weren't for us, gun control would have been passed. But legislators are afraid of the NRA. And there's a reason for that. The NRA people are motivated. There's over 5 million NRA members now. And a couple years ago, the NRA convention was in Indianapolis. About 75,000 NRA members took a day off work or several days off work and went to Indianapolis for the NRA convention. Michael Bloomberg, with his Moms Demand Action group, flew in 120 people, 100 Moms Demand Action members and 20 victims of crime, along with their spouses, put them up in hotels, gave them spending money, paid all their meals, everything. All they had to do was come protest for 2 hours on, I think it was Saturday morning. Of that 120 people plus spouses, call it 240, 35 people showed up. Bloomberg paid all their expenses, gave them all a vacation to the city of Indianapolis, and 35 of 240 people showed up to protest for 2 hours. That's all he asked of them. And they couldn't even get out to protest for 2 hours. You got a bunch of lazy people working for you, they just don't give a damn. Versus 70,000 people who paid on their own dime to go to Indianapolis to the NRA convention. That's why we're winning this thing. 35 people showed up. There's a picture of it on Facebook. The only thing that stops a bad guy with evil in his heart is a good guy with a gun. Every mass spree killing in this country, save 2, I believe, since the 1950s, has been committed in a gun-free zone. The terrorist attack in Orlando was a gun-free zone by statute. The bartender at the Pulse nightclub said the guy came in and it was like shooting fish in a barrel. He's exactly right, because nobody had the means to shoot back. Those people died just that quickly. Every 3 or 4 seconds, another shot, another person died. Or actually, I should revise that. Another person was wounded. The rifle he used wasn't an AR-15, although it kind of sort of looked like one. But that round is better suited for killing coyotes than killing people. It will kill people, but it's more of a wounding round. And the military doesn't see that as a bad thing, because if you wound an enemy soldier, most civilized military will have 2 more people to carry that wounded individual back for treatment. But the SWAT team waited 3 hours after the initial attack to make entry, to breach the building. Those people died out in those 3 hours. The majority of those 50 people who died bled out in the 3 hours it took the SWAT team. I thought in this day and age, after Columbine, that the police agencies across America had their heads out of their butts and knew that when you have an active shooter, particularly a Muslim terrorist, you've got to go in now with a hasty team. If you got 2 guys, you go in with 2 guys. If you got 5 guys, you go in with 5 guys. You go in now because every 3 or 4 seconds, somebody else is taking a bullet. And if you sit around picking your nose, scratching your butt, and developing a plan, those people that were wounded initially bleed out. Not many people can take a gunshot with no treatment for 3 hours and expect to live. So that's what's going on. Now, Chicago, with their fine gun control regulations, the majority of which, or quite a few of which, were struck down with the passage of the Firearms Concealed Carry Act, you would think it would be a utopia. I mean, the crime-free streets of Chicago are a small price to pay for all that gun control, is it not? In 2012, 532 people were killed in the Chicago streets, thanks to Chicago-style gun control, in our opinion. About an hour west of Chicago, in Illinois' second largest city, Aurora, without Chicago's strict gun control laws. Does anybody want to hazard a guess how many homicides Aurora had in 2012? 0! You win the prize. Not a single homicide in Aurora without Chicago-style gun control. Yes, there's a big difference in population. Not a single solitary fatality. That goes to show a lot of what's going on. I touched a little bit on imprisonment and Illinois' prison problem. Nationwide, between 1960 and 1980, the per capita imprisonment rate for violent crimes fell from 738 to 227. In that same period, violent crime nationwide tripled. It's not rocket science. In that case, correlation there is pretty strong. You put bad, violent people in prison, they don't commit crimes. The bottom line is the progressive thing we need to do as a group, as conservatives, as gun rights supporters and all that, the progressive thing to do is to support liberty by opposing gun laws and other government control schemes, because ultimately gun control is about people control and race control, not about crime control. We need to progress towards a future of freedom and not a system that tries to reenact past tyrannies. So, it is what it is. And with that, I'll turn it over to speaker number 2.
Hi, like Lenny said, my name is Mike Ryu. I'm originally from Canada. I've been living in Lake County since 1999. Was on a visa for several years, married my wife in 2000, decided to be a citizen. Guess about 2007 is when I started getting my green card. The very first thing I did when I got my green card was get a handgun. It was the first time in my entire life that I could have a handgun because they're illegal in the country of Canada. Canada has a lot of rifles and shotguns, but handguns have been banned. Only the police can have handguns. You can have a handgun to go to the range, but you have to get a license to buy the gun. You need a license to go shopping for the gun. You need a license to buy the gun. You need a license to own the gun. You need a license to go to the range, and you have to say, I'm going to go from point A to point B. It's very similar to the laws in Washington where you can't be caught off route. Most people in Canada buy a handgun. They buy a locker at the range, and they leave it in the range. And that's the end of that. Do I lose? Oh. So ends up that nobody in Canada bothers to get handguns. Bought my first handgun probably at the age of around 40. Decided I'm a perfectionist. I like to shoot very well. I wanted to learn how to do it. It was a complete different animal than shooting a rifle or a shotgun. And I didn't know where to get training. Didn't know John. He's too far away for me to take my training with him. Jumped around, tried to get training locally, and there was really no place to get me to the level where I was or I wanted to be. Therefore, that's when we started Red Dot Arms. And actually, I see some customers and students in this room that we've put through, and so that's kind of exciting to see. My goal here tonight is to talk about the 4473 and the process of purchasing a firearm and what the legalities are from our aspect as a dealer. And show of hands, who has never bought a firearm? And I'm not going to report that. I just want to get an account for the paperwork on why the paper. Wasn't a plug, but I wanted to know. Lisa's passed around 4473s. This is the form that we legally have to fill out when purchasing a firearm. And this is a ATF form, a very strict form. They are more concerned sometimes when they do an audit about making sure that it says street instead of avenue and all of the correct information. They come in and do an audit. It's like they're like the Tasmanian devil, but they want to see all of the dots crossed on the form. It's a very tedious process, and it's kind of, the whole process to me, as being a gun owner, I don't have a boat. I haven't lost too many guns, but I've stopped counting after a few. I have 10 fingers, I stopped counting. The funny thing is I have to fill out a form, and I have to wait 3 days, just like anybody else, from buying a gun for my own business. I keep saying if I'm going to snap and go postal, I'm going to have to wait 3 days to get a gun when I own 800 in a building. So, that's the day. So I got to sit there for 3 days before I'm going to go crazy and go shoot up a place. It's kind of silly. The process is kind of idiotic. If you've already got a gun and you've bought several guns, I have people that have bought 15, 20 guns from us, and they have to wait 3 days. Is that the gun they're going to commit a crime with? After you've had a few and you've got a couple of background checks, perhaps you should be able to get a gun and just go home with it. The state of Wisconsin passed that last year where you can buy a handgun now and you just leave with it that day. And there hasn't been any news out of Wisconsin of people going crazy and going shooting place up with a handgun. So, for the form, the form in most states will have to you have to call NICS, which is a national investigative.
Instant check system?
What is it?
National instant check system?
Yeah, but it's the word I is national something background checks, FTIP, inquiry. So it's the National Inquiry of Background Check System. The state of Illinois, they always go a little bit further. We have FTIP here, so we don't have to call in NICS. We have to call the state of Illinois for the state police. They're very nice. Every time I have to say when I call the state police for any question, they're always very professional, very nice, but the whole system is kind of silly. If somebody comes into my gun shop, any gun shop you go to, they ask for a FOID card. Can I see your FOID card? And did a lot of research on their website. Unlike the ATF, when you open a gun shop, the state police never come to visit you. They don't tell you anything. You kind of got to figure it out. And if you call them, they never have the answer. They're very nice. They're very polite, but they don't have the answers. I wanted to challenge the asking for a FOID card when somebody comes into my shop. Do I have to? And could not find it on their website. I called one lady, and the lady says, "Well, of course you do." I said, "Where does it say that? Where in the law does it say you have to ask for a FOID card?" And they said, "Well, just go to any gun shop and they ask." I said, "Well, that's not a law. That's just because everybody else is doing it. And I get it. To buy ammunition and to buy a gun, I need to see a FOID card. But just to touch one and to look at one." So they said that they would get the sergeant of something, 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 some big title guy would call me back. Took about 3 weeks, so I thought they were blowing me off. And finally he calls me and he goes, "Yeah, there's nowhere in the law that you need to ask somebody for a FOID card." I said, "Oh, okay, so I don't have to do it." He goes, "Well, no, not really. It's just, common courtesy and people just want to follow the rules." And I said, "But don't you guys do stings sometimes to make sure that gun shops are asking?" He goes, Yeah, we do that sometimes. Maybe you should ask." So that's kind of the law is kind of, so we ask now for the simplicity of, just because it's what everybody else does, but I get guys that come in with their wives, and she doesn't have a FOID card. You can tell he wants her to have a gun, start getting into the sport, and I just, she doesn't have a FOID card. Go ahead, grab a gun, touch a gun. She's not going to buy it. If she's going to buy one, she'll have to go get a FOID card. As simple as that. So it's kind of goofy on how nobody really knows what the laws are. Even as a dealer, there are a lot of local dealers that sell guns made by High Point, Heritage, Cobra. They're aluminum guns. We have been, and in our district, we have a Republican legislator, and we've been trying to get with them to see if we can get around the law. There is a law going back to 1976 that any gun that melts below 800 degrees cannot be sold in the state of Illinois. Half of our competitors sell these guns. We sell them on our online store, and we ship them out all over the country, but we can't sell them to Illinois residents, and we can't get a straight answer. We don't know what the fine is. We don't know what's going to happen if you do. Nobody knows, and yet we've been after, and we have made probably, I would say, over a dozen phone calls to legislators to say, hey, what gives? We have friends that know these people that are asking questions, and yet we can't get answers on why can't we sell this gun and why are other people selling them. And there are big name stores in the Chicago area that are selling these guns that are illegal. The law was passed back in the days where the Saturday night specials were being sold. It's another reason, really what they are is they're trying to sell, they're stopping us to sell cheap guns to people that can't afford an expensive gun.
Affordable.
And, what did I say?
Affordable.
Did I say expensive?
You said cheap.
Oh, cheap.
I said
Affordable.
affordable.
I have a Cobra, it's a Derringer. It's a cheap gun. So anyways, on to the form. The first half of the form, if anybody that's never filled one, they've been passed around the tables, grab one. The very first section is just demographics information, your name, your address, all that good stuff. It's kind of funny. I need a piece of ID to see, to prove where you live when we go through this form. I get a lot of people that show up to buy a gun, even though they're controlled substances. They show up with no correct ID. I have to see an ID of where you actually live. A red dot rule is we want to see 2 pieces of ID. State of Illinois, you need to have a FOID card, so that's 1 piece. If we didn't have the FOID card, I'd only ask for 1, but since we have the 2, so I always require 2. If they don't have the correct address and they don't match, I'll accept the 1 place where you live. It's mind-boggling that people do have concealed carry in the state now and don't have ID that match. If I was caught in a shooting and protecting my life, I'd want all my paperwork in order when the police show up, but it's kind of mind-boggling how our neighbors don't see it that way. If you ever fill the form, Social Security number is optional. Do not fill that out. I tell customers all the time, don't fill it out. It's going to be in our office. We lock it up. But at any other gun shop, you don't know where this paperwork is going to be. Now, I'll explain the process of the paperwork shortly. There's some tricky questions. 10A and 10B are kind of funny. One of them is ethnicity, Hispanic or Latino, not Hispanic or Latino. You got to fill that out. And people usually fill out race, so they'll be either white, black, or African American, Asian. People don't get why you have to fill 2 out, and it's kind of mind-boggling. Who cares? Who cares what color you are if you're buying a gun or not? What your ethnicity is? I'm French Canadian. Whoop-de-doo. You know what I mean? Why isn't there a box for us? So it's just mind-boggling on why they would need to know that. Everything else on the bottom of it has to be filled in to be you are the person that is taking transaction. The wording of it is kind of funny because are you the actually transferee or buyer of the firearm? We get a lot of people that don't even know what that means, and I can't help you. If you fill out the form, I can't. If you ask questions, I really can't help you answering any questions. That's an ATF rule. You have to be able to fill it. So we kind of usually just say, are you the person buying the gun? And they will say yes. Okay, well, I can't even say it. That's the answer. And then they clue in. The rest of the answers are usually a no. People check mark them and don't even read them if they filled them out 1 time. I'll leave the forms and I'll pick them up, but take a look at them. These are all questions that if a person lies on it, and I'll just pick one, are you an illegal alien of the United States? That's not my job as a dealer to go verify that you said yes or no. All I know is if you said yes, I can't sell you a gun. They all have to say no for me. It's not my job to verify anything. If somebody does lie on the form, most of the time, like he said, nothing happens. So you get these bad guys that come in, and I've had a long discussion today about it. Are you addicted to marijuana? I would venture to guess that I've probably sold a lot of firearms to people that smoke marijuana, but they don't tell me, and I don't know, and it's not my job to decide who can and who cannot. Sold a gun one day. The guy took a concealed carry class on a Wednesday, took possession of his gun, left, came back the next day, and unfortunately he had cancer, and he was getting fingerprinted at our location for a drug marijuana card. So about 2 months later, I had a meeting with the ATF, and I said, well, the state of Illinois says it's okay for him to have a FOID card and have a marijuana card. At what point? She goes, oh, you can't sell him a gun. The federal government consider him addicted to marijuana. She says, well, you can't sell him a gun. How am I going to remember who he is? The day after I recognized who he was, they put the onus on me that it has to be, I can't sell him a gun. Well, I'll be completely honest with you, I couldn't recognize him unless he told me that he was that person. So take a look at those questions just to see what they are. These are what the background checks are. They are on page 2, when the person signs that, they are saying that all of these things are true. If that person has lied, the ATF or the federal government never go after people. So they're pushing for all these background checks, and I get it. I get that we want to try to stop things, but the guy in Orlando this week, he passed a background check. He worked in a security detail somewhere. So he passed all kinds of background checks. We can't live, I was just telling Lisa today, unless we have the minority report and we have 3 people sitting in a bowl of milk telling us what the crimes are, we really can't stop anybody from knowing what they're going to do. So how do we stop this? This was a good step, I get it. But after they sign it, we can go out and then we officially can do a background check. So like I said, we sell guns online. So you could be sitting in the city of Chicago, buy a gun. We can't run your background check till you filled out the first page of the form, and you've signed it, and you're saying that this is true. At that point, we call F-tip. Now, as I mentioned earlier, most other states will call NICS, which is a national system. The national system has 3 days to kick you back an answer, and if they don't get back to you in 3 days, you can legally give the firearm to that person. So that's something that they don't talk about when they're doing all these background checks and the gun show loophole. If the federal government doesn't get back to you in 3 days, you can give the firearm to the person. State of Illinois says no way. It is, you have to wait for the 3 days. Now, most people don't know that, but they have to give it to you back, a response. So if I'll tell people, I can't do anything. If they're not getting back to you, I can't call the state and say, hey, give him his gun. But I gladly give them the number and call Springfield and find out, hey, what's taking so long? It's my constitutional right. They have to give you an answer within 24 hours for a long gun and then 3 days, 72 hours for a handgun. And I encourage my customers all the time, if they're getting jerked around, call Springfield and find out. If you're a law-abiding citizen, you should get your gun. Simple as that. So once that's filled out, they wait their waiting period, and it's kind of ambiguous for the state of Illinois. The state of Illinois is when the agreement to purchase the gun. So even I, buying a gun from myself, when did I agree to make the purchase? Because really the purchase is, hey, do you want to buy that gun? You're buying that gun? Perfect. Come back in 3 days and pay for it. It's kind of when we've made the agreement. So if I have somebody, but for the ATF's purpose, we always try to make sure, give me a deposit for $1. Let's have a receipt, because I want to just cover my butt all the time. But it really is when the agreement is made, is what the law is in the state of Illinois, and that's what's in the books. How do you prove when the deal was made? So everything is always ambiguous with this stuff. So 3 days later, they come in. We do the what's called the disposition, and we give the gun away. As a dealer, I love the FOID card because it takes a lot of the onus off of me and the responsibility, because 3 days later, I still have to ask you for your FOID card. So that way there, I know that you haven't committed anything or the state hasn't gotten a hold of you. As a citizen, I think it is such an infringement on our rights to have this little piece of paper that says you can have a gun. Back in Canada, at least, well, we would have one back in Ontario. It was a firearm acquisition form, which was just red tape, just like the FOID card, expired in 5 years, a little piece of paper that said you could buy guns and ammunition. So I've always lived with some kind of infringement like that. I think it's wrong, but it is what it is. How are we doing on time? The FOID card, again, to push the issue, if nobody has one, I have to tell you, if you are going to get a gun and you're going to have the FOID card, it is a $10 tax, but you can get yourself in a heap of trouble. We have a customer right now that bought a firearm and by the time he bought the firearm and by the time he picked it up, he was coming back hunting, and it's been about 4 months now that he's trying to get out of the charges that he has, because he was caught speeding, had a gun in the car, was coming back hunting, and all of a sudden he got charged with, I can't even remember the charges, but there's 5 or 6 different charges that he has just because he didn't have that little piece of plastic for $10. So if you have a gun and you're going to, you're going to even think about buying a firearm, make sure you have it.
Your spouse has it as well.
Anybody that's over 18 that has access to a gun, and we always kind of talk amongst us at the shop. What if your wife doesn't have one, but the gun's on the kitchen table and you're in the shower? Well, she has access to the firearm, so they would probably bust her. A lot of the guys that instruct for us are police officers, and it's the key word is always intent. You know, if the wife goes, "Oh, I didn't know there was a gun there," or went, "Oh my God, I didn't know there was a," they would know that she didn't have intentions of. But again, anybody that has access to a firearm in your house should have a FOID card, just to save them that trouble. Just an ounce of prevention for the $10. We get a lot of people that older women that show up with a gun in a shoebox and go, "Yeah, my husband passed away and I'd like to sell this." And we go, "Okay, well, can we have your FOID card?" What's a FOID card? and she was just driving around with a gun. That's happened several times where we just say, you know what, here's what we're going to do. You find a friend that has a FOID card, we'll hold the gun for free. Whoops. We'll hold the gun for free here, and we'll just hold it on until somebody can come and get it. You have anybody that you know that owns firearms, I won't even let them leave the building, because God forbid something happen. Just an innocent trying to get rid of selling something, an heirloom from their husband, can get them in such trouble. That's about it for me.
Couple of quick things here. There'll be a couple of microphones coming around. Don't start talking until you have the microphone in front of you. Otherwise, the live stream is not going to pick it up. Make sure this mic gets turned on for you. Real quick, all the stuff on the table is for you to take home with you. It's free. We have more materials over here on the table at the left. Also on your table, there's sign-up sheets. If you want to join Heartland, donate to Heartland, there's sheets right there in the back with Gwen, and they'll pass those around. There's also envelopes on the table if you'd like to donate to Heartland to help us with everything that we're doing here. And we will start here now. Red Dot Arms has some handouts over here on the left on the table over here, and I'm sure both gentlemen will be free to answer questions afterwards and stuff and talk to you a little bit more if you have some specific questions and stuff that don't get answered during the Q&A. So we'll start here. We're right here in the front. Hang on. Wait, Lindsay. Oh, you got two. Okay, so you've got... It should be just in the back there. Let's...
You need a FOID card.
There we go.
Okay. I need a FOID card. Okay. There's so many places that you cannot bring in a weapon, these gun-free zones. Is that going to be changed? I mean, is the NRA working on this? Because, like you said, statistics show that the biggest problem areas are these gun-free zones. So what's going to happen with that?
That's a good question, the gun-free zones. We are working as Gun Save Life to encourage businesses to take down the signs through an education campaign with the businesses. We try to educate the managers and the owners that this sign is not going to make your business safer. In fact, if anything, it makes it riskier for your employees and your customers, because the bad guys are going to walk past a place that has no sign, and they're going to be drawn to that sign, almost like bees to honey, so to speak. We've had a lot of luck, especially downstate. A lot of businesses were posted initially, and now they've taken the signs down, so that's good. We're working up here in Chicagoland as well. There are some businesses that are persistent in keeping the signs up, but we just work at it, and we encourage people to vote with their dollars. If your bank posts up a sign, take your account to another bank and then send them a letter. And if you're going to a restaurant some night and you see it's posted, go to another restaurant and send them that receipt for $350 that you and your party spent at that other restaurant, and say, we were going to spend this money at your restaurant, but we noticed that sign out front, and we're just not comfortable going to a place that's safer for criminals to ply their trade. So that's what we encourage people to do. This is something that we all can do. It's not just the NRA does it or the Gun Save Life or ISRA, but we as a group can do it. And also in Illinois, the signs, the rules and regulations about those are extensive. And if the sign is deficient in any manner whatsoever, it is not valid under Illinois law. So if they got a little excited with the scissors and chopped off the bottom of a border, you can carry your gun in without fear of arrest or any kind of problems. So that's a good thing. And there's a whole lot of people with non-compliant signs. And frankly, we found a lot of businesses here in Illinois that are intentionally posting non-compliant signage or in a non-compliant manner to get the management off of the local managers' backs or local security like the malls, but at the same time they are posting these signs in a non-compliant fashion so that gun owners carrying their guns won't get jammed up if they get caught, which is almost unlikely to happen, but it does happen. So that's, I hope, kind of an answer for your question.
You got anything else to add on that, Mike?
I frequent a place weekly for my daughter, and the front door has the gun sign, the back door doesn't. He is It's quite clear to me that the owner wants us to go through the back door, and it has to be on every single door you're walking in. So they have to post it. Be very careful. The Jewel by where I live have the sign. It's the see-through plastic sign at the bottom, and it looks like it's a no gun sign, but if you go read, it's for vendors and staff only. I was going to walk away from the Jewel, and I went, oh, it's the wrong sign, but still, if you don't want to support. So I went back to the car, left my gun in the car, went back to the manager, speak to the manager, and explained to him that I was no longer going to be shopping at his store, and he actually took me out and went, read the sign. And it, again, you got to make sure that the sign is compliant, and it's on all the doors. Find a door that doesn't have the sign, and if not, don't go there.
Okay, Art, back here, had his hand up first.
I'm a former member of an extremely liberal church who decided in a business meeting they were going to put these signs up until their insurance agent said, okay, that's fine, but your insurance rates will triple when you put those signs up, and they didn't. But my question is, have you heard what kind of long gun was used in Florida? I've heard all kinds of things in the news. Have you heard anything more specific?
It was a Sig Sauer SPX or
MCX.
SPX. The only thing that it and the AR-15 share is the magazines. Pretty much everything else will not translate from one rifle to the next.
It has a mil-spec lower receiver. Sig Sauer has a mil-spec lower receiver, which means that the grip and the trigger mechanism are standard.
That is not the information that I'm aware of with the Sig Sauer firearm, but that may be the case. I don't have any Sig Sauers. I've got several AR-15s that are now at the bottom of a lake somewhere, and I'm pretty good at armoring them, but I haven't actually laid hand on an XPX, so I don't know. But the significance to me is that it's not an AR-15, that the media portrays everything as being everything from a Glock pistol to a 47 Ford is all an AR-15 to the media.
So next question over here.
First off, please wait to get a microphone. If you're talking without a microphone, you are not heard on the live stream, so we want to make sure that our live stream audience hears everything that's going on. Thank you.
This question's from Mike. You're from Canada, and we were getting the statistics about the crime rate in cities in Chicago with no guns whatsoever for the people there. What are the crime rates in Canada, especially your larger cities, Toronto?
They're finding other means to kill themselves. So there's, you know what I mean? I made big jokes after the Boston Marathon because I own 3 pressure cookers. I cook with them, and I was like, hurry up, head to the nearest Ace, get yourself some rings and some seals now because they're going to ban the pressure cookers. So, I mean, people are going to use whatever they need or what, you know what I mean? Handguns are illegal, so if you look at the statistics, you know what I mean, there are tons of people in this country that are killed with handguns, but the AR-15 is outnumbered by hammers. People die more with hammers in this country than AR-15s, but nobody freaks out when they see a carpenter walking down the street with a hammer on his belt. Nobody's freaking out, but you take an AR-15 and everybody's going to jump him. So people will find ways to kill themselves regardless. They're not using handguns in Toronto because they don't exist, but there are murders in the big city. I'm from a northern city in Ontario. There are all the shootings there. When you hear of something happening, usually it's a shotgun or a rifle because that's what they use. AR-15s are not. They don't exist in Canada, but I mean, I got my first 12 gauge. I was 12 years old. I got a British 303 Lee Enfield at the age of 16, and I didn't. When I was telling my friends, nobody went, "Oh my God!" It was just common. Everybody goes and hunts, and so it's common for people to have guns. So there are a lot of guns, but it's hard to walk the streets and do a drive-by with a British Lee Enfield. So. And for the AR-15, I'd love, I'm all with Tom Brokaw. He wants to ban the AR-14. Are you in agreement that we should ban the AR-14? That's a deadly gun, and I think we should ban. I'm with Tom on that.
So Lindsay has the next question from over here.
Hi. I heard some annual numbers bantered about for fatalities by guns, 33,000, 35,000 a year. Is there a central database that kind of defines what the causation is, i.e. gangland, accidental, things that kind of, find clarity in what actually was attributable to some kind of intent to kill?
Absolutely. Go to the Center for Disease Control website, and you can find the mortality tables, and they will go into great detail, everything from toilet bowl lids to hammers to whatever it is that's used for the causing the death. Yeah, that 30,000 number is true, but 60% of those, right off the top of my head, are suicides. And then you've got some accidental deaths, negligent discharges type thing, and sometimes we get lucky and it's one gangbanger that negligently discharges his gun into the back of the head of the other gangbanger. But sometimes it's kids that get a hold of their parents' guns and they haven't been trained in what to do with a gun. Stop, don't touch, leave the area, tell an adult, and sometimes we'll have an accident. But the accidental death rate in the United States is at historical lows, thanks in large part to the NRA's training program, the Eddie Eagle program. Stop, don't touch, leave the area, tell an adult, and the wide range of NRA instructors across America who are teaching the fundamental rifle, pistol, shotgun type classes. And of course, safety is the number one consideration in all of those classes, and that's what we're striving for. As far as the criminal misuse of guns, just look at Chicago. The average guy getting shot in Chicago or murdered in Chicago has lots and lots of criminal background, multiple felonies, all kinds of that kind of stuff. Probably 85% of the people getting killed in Chicago are not angels by a long shot. And in fact, the new police chief has said that something on the order of, 1,700 or 1,800 people are responsible for like 75% of the violence in Chicago right now. So it is what it is.
Yeah, and there was a study just came out of Chicago where all the criminals, where most of them were buying the guns off the street. They weren't going to gun dealers to buy. So our next question comes from over this side.
Yes, with Illinois' concealed carry process being so stringent, so to say, thank you. My question to you is, what holds other states back from honoring our concealed carry license, and what's a good resource for the most up-to-date information on what states have reciprocity with us?
I enjoy the site called USA Carry. I don't know if your site does have it. I use usacarry.com. If you forget that website, it's on the red.arms.com site right at the bottom. There's a link for it. They have a really good map. The other states right now are kind of accepting us. I never thought Wisconsin, with us not letting Wisconsin people come down here, but that's just the legislation of other states, and there's nothing that Illinois, I don't think Illinois is working with anybody to work this out. So, and they have banned, and I keep forgetting, there's only 4 states that they allow, which is mind-boggling to me that for $300 I would think that the state of Illinois, in the financial situation they're in, that they'd accept anybody, because who cares if they took the 16 hours of training. But there are only 4 states, I think Virginia, Hawaii, and do you know the other 2?
One of the Dakotas, I think, and maybe New Mexico.
So there's 4 states that they're allowing, and that's because they have similar training to us, which nobody has the 16 hours.
I like handgunlaw.us, and Illinois' license is recognized in almost 24 or 5 states now. So, it's pretty much recognized in a whole lot of states, and once you have the Illinois license, you can get a Florida or an Arizona or Utah license, and that'll get you another half dozen states or so. So you can cover most of the country with an Illinois license and maybe one other one if you're willing to jump through those hoops. So it's not that onerous in the grand scheme of things. Now, for the people visiting from out of state, yeah, it's a pain from them with their concealed carry licenses from the other states. But it's all just gun control is what it is. People control. Indiana's had concealed carry since the 60s. They have no training requirement. They've got a lifetime license for, I think, $100 or thereabouts, and they don't have a problem with people doing stupid things. I mean, occasionally somebody ineptly handles a gun and negligently discharges it. They deal with them in the courts and the civil process. But by and large, people are just fine. They don't need 16 hours of training to know when is appropriate to pull out their gun and when it is not.
We have a question online. Jim's going to read that question real quick.
All right, thank you. This is from Mike Padden. I know you, Mike. Hello, Mike. Hope to see you in here live next time. His question is, are there proposals to use insurance to deal with the risk of firearm misuse. If most purchases are law-abiding, insurance should be cheap. High-risk weapons might be more expensive.
Here's the thing on insurance. No insurance company is going to insure you for a willful tort. And discharging your firearm is a willful tort against another person. It may be justified, but it's still a willful tort. And if you require insurance that isn't available in the public marketplace, you effectively ban gun ownership among the people out there in the world. So that's the scoop on insurance. Gun owners aren't responsible for criminal misuse of guns. Let's get that clear. We as gun owners, that's not our responsibility. That's the people that commit the crimes. It's their responsibility, and it's up to society to take it out of those individuals' hides, so to speak. And the best way to do that is to put people who have violent tendencies and exhibit violent behavior and predatory behavior with others, put them in prison. That way they don't victimize other people, and it saves society a whole lot of money. Yeah, it costs $50,000 a year to imprison them, but it costs a whole lot more when they start killing people and robbing people and otherwise destroying things in our society.
Question in the back?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about this question the guy was asking about reciprocity. And really there's two issues. There's recognition and there's reciprocity. Recognition is the Illinois license being recognized by another state, and that's the majority of the cases you're talking about. The states that don't recognize that don't have reciprocity with us and require reciprocity are Colorado and South Carolina, I believe, as well. Those are the only two that don't recognize it because we don't have a reciprocal agreement for their licensees. So that's part of the sticky wicket as far as that goes. No, I just wanted to ask you guys, and I got here late, if you had any idea about what was being said, I guess, in Democratic circles I've been following after Orlando about banning people who are on the no-fly list or on the terror watch list. So do you guys know anything about that?
Here's the thing, the terror watch list. Nobody knows who's on the terror watch list. Even the federal appellate court couldn't find out who was on the watch list, who's responsible for putting people on it, who's responsible for taking people off of it, and even ordering the removal of people's names. This individual, the terrorist that committed the Orlando terror attack, was on the terror watch list back in, I think, 2014. After 4, 6, 8 months after the investigation was concluded, he was removed from the terrorist watch list, according to the FBI director. And so passing this thing where we deprive Americans who are on this super secret government list that nobody knows who's on it or how you get on it or how you get off it, depriving them of their constitutional rights seems kind of un-American to say the least, but it wouldn't have done any good in this case at all. In fact, the beloved Teddy Kennedy was on the federal do not fly list at one time. There have been other semi-famous celebrities and media personalities who have been on that same list as well. So, you know, it is what it is, and I am very much opposed to taking away anybody's constitutional rights of any sort without due process. And the no-fly list is very much a no due process process.
So I have a question over here, then we'll come back to one in the front.
Thank you. Thanks so much for coming. It's definitely been an interesting talk so far. I was curious about your guys' opinion on high-capacity semi-automatic rifles, if that, when it comes to gun control, that should be something that should either be a non-option for the majority of citizens or be kind of checked a little bit more stringently. Do you think that that would be something that would be helpful, something that would be detrimental as far as infringement on rights, or just what your opinion on that was?
They aren't high capacity, they're full capacity. If it's good enough for the police, it's good enough for the civilian world. We don't require the Chicago Tribune or the Sun-Times to print their paper on colonial era printing presses. We don't require them to use typewriters. So why should they require us to use colonial era firearms in our daily lives? We have the internet today, you know, technology is advanced. You know, a magazine's a magazine, it doesn't matter what it is. And frankly, if I'm protecting my loved ones from a violent attack, I want full capacity. I want everything I can get because there may be multiple attackers, and I may need to shoot a whole lot of times and a whole lot of people, and I don't want to be limited to 6 or 8 rounds like they are in New York State, or 10 rounds in some other states. You know, the magazine capacity has little to do with the firearm itself, other than to arbitrarily handicap the law-abiding. The bad guys are not going to care about a magazine capacity law. The bad guys don't care about the laws against homicide. Why should they care about a law against magazine capacity? This is all just red herrings from the left. You know, just give us a little bit more, and we'll promise you safety. Well, sorry, it ain't working. Gun control has been a failure for years. It failed down in Florida, and it's just ironic that you know, some gay groups are coming out saying that we're going to look to gun control now. Well, gun control worked out really well in the Pulse nightclub now, didn't it? Being a gun-free zone and all that. And the prohibitions against homicide and shooting people, those laws worked out pretty well there. The only thing that stops bad people with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And Americans are not stupid, and that goes for here in Illinois. When Barack Obama was inaugurated, there were 1.189 million FOID cards in Illinois, gun owners effectively. Just in the last month or two, we've just eclipsed 2 million FOID card holders, a growth of 58 or 9% in less than 8 years. That is why Barack Obama is known as the gun salesman of our lifetime.
You got anything else you want to add? Okay.
In addition to the gun-free zone, with the there's 2 laws, one law affecting Illinois and Florida, wherein you cannot conceal carry into an establishment where over 50% of the revenue is based on alcohol sales. Can you imagine what would have happened at the Pulse if there was concealed carry in the audience?
You're absolutely right. And
excuse me. And what are the stats on for the number of states that have that law compared to the ones that don't, and to their?
I don't know the numbers of states that allow carry in bars, and it's kind of a complex issue. Indiana, for instance, you can carry in a bar all day long, and they don't have any problems with people doing stupid things. Virginia had kind of a unique thing a few years ago. It was kind of funny. If you walked in with your gun concealed, as mine is concealed here tonight, I was not allowed to go into a bar or even a restaurant that served alcohol with my concealed carry piece on. However, if I lifted up my shirt and tucked it behind my gun, I could go in and have a beer, and it was no problem. That's just an example of how bizarre the rules are in the different states. Missouri here's another example for you. In Missouri, they have a ton of prohibited locations similar to Illinois. The only thing about the state of Missouri is if you ignore those signs and go ahead and carry in those statutorily prohibited areas, the worst they can do is ask you to leave. Only if you refuse to leave can you then be fined $50 and they can't take your gun. The law in Illinois is if they catch you in a prohibited area with the gun and you're a jerk to the police officer, it's a $150 fine and they can't take your gun the first time. They cannot take your gun.
Okay, question back here.
Mike, in the presidential speech right after Florida, President Obama mentioned the gun show loopholes. I just wanted you to address the Illinois, if there are any loopholes, or in other states at all. What are the gun show loopholes that President Obama is talking about?
The loophole is they don't want individuals to sell guns to themselves. Now, most gun shows, if a dealer goes to a gun show, and I was to bring a handful of guns to a gun show, and you decided to buy a gun, we can make the handshake like John and I did, but you have to come back to my shop, fill out the form the Monday morning, and we do the background check, and you get the gun at my shop. Now, if you have 2 individuals that decide that they want to sell a gun to themselves, in most states, they can sell a gun just like you say, hey, I'm tired of my Corolla, and I'm going to sell my Toyota Corolla to my neighbor. You just sell the gun exactly in the same way. So that's kind of the loophole. Starting last year, now individuals selling a gun to each other need to do a background check off the state police website. So that loophole does not exist anymore in Illinois, but there are other states that individuals can sell a gun. I mean, again, Americans are pretty smart. They're not going downtown Chicago and go, hey, you want to buy a gun? And selling a gun to a gangbanger. So most people are selling guns to people they know, and again, are law-abiding citizens. So, I mean, it's this administration's ploy to make it sound like there's a whole bunch of guns being sold on the streets to illegal people. There is a case right now going on with a Lake County deputy being, he's suspended because he sold 56 guns in a 2-year period, and there was a murder that was done and a cop got shot in the city of Chicago when he used to be a Chicago cop. He sold 56 guns to people. That's the kind of guy that we need to look at, because who is he selling guns to? But the average Joe isn't selling a gun to bad guys.
I do have a number for that. The number of crime guns that are acquired at gun shows is 0.7%.
Okay. Got another question online, then we'll come back here to the back, and then we got another one up front.
Okay, great. This is from Vladimir T. Sepish in our chat room at the live stream. What's funny is that a lot of people in the chat room answered it, but I want to hear you guys answer it briefly as well. Is the term assault weapon precise enough to only apply to AR-15 style rifles, or is it an incorrect term?
Well, that's a kind of a funny term because AR stands for a SKU number from Armalite, and it's not the assault rifle. I hate the term assault rifle. I get people coming in my shop, it's an assault rifle. No, it's an AR-15. It's a model. It's like saying an F-250. And I mean, it's simply a SKU number that everybody else has copycatted it from. And I mean, just like the computers were, I mean, Microsoft came out with their MS-DOS, and then everybody else was using a PC. The PC was really an IBM product, and then everybody came out with a PC. So that's just a term that is because it looks like what we see in movies. By the time that most people turn 18, they have seen 7,000 murders on TV, and most of them are with military-style weapons. And I think we just got to stop watching TV a little.
I refuse to use those words because they belong to the left and they've been demonized over the year. What somebody would call that, I would call a police patrol rifle, or a freedom stick, or a defense device, or a child protection tool, or a scary black rifle. But I don't call them the AW or AR words because, in my opinion, that's just legitimizing the other side's use of the language, and through verbal judo, I think that the wise person, you're better off, calling that thing a police patrol type rifle or a freedom stick or whatever you want to call it. Just don't call it one of those things that the media has demonized and the left has demonized over the years.
We've got the question. We'll come back. We'll make sure we get to you real quick here.
Hi. Just to go back a little bit, we were talking about the Illinois laws and all that. Something that's kind of sickly humorous is several years ago, Illinois passed a law that said if you use a gun in a drive-by shooting, you could lose your license. So here you go by, shoot 3-4 people, and you get caught. It's like, I'm going to lose my license. But on another point, I have a lot of people, that come to me about, weaponry and stuff like that, and gun questions. And a lot of people are, worried about the safety of a gun around a house. For a lot of people that are kind of hesitant about having a gun around a house, they have these things called biometric safes. Put one finger, swipe like that, the safe opens. So you can have a couple of those positioned in your house. It can be very safe if you have grandkids like myself and things like that. The last point I want to make is, does anybody here, are you familiar with the ban in Cook County? A lot of people are totally unaware of this. That Cook County actually right now does have a ban against scary assault-looking weapons, along with even pistol grip shotguns, large magazines, and other things. That's been going through the court systems to try to get it repealed. Are you aware what that might be at this point?
That is, as you say, it's winding through the courts, and I believe it has been upheld in one district and it's been struck in another district, and it's kind of beyond, I'm not that deep into the court process and legal process. I know GSL has a lawsuit right now against Chicago's ammo tax and gun tax, but as far as the AW ban legal issues, I'm not that familiar with it. I will say, though, that Illinois' Firearms Concealed Carry Act preempted all of the local and county ordinances on the transportation of firearms, all firearms, and also anything to do with handguns. So my Glock 17 and the 17-round full-capacity magazine, or my 33-round Happy Sticks, are perfectly legal in Chicago because, I'm carrying under the auspices of the Firearm Concealed Carry Act, and the AR-15 Scary Black Gun magazines that are in the back of my van are being transported as well, and there's not a darn thing they can do about that, or the AR-15 in the back of my van as well. It is what it is. You just have to get creative. But the best thing is, if the police show up at your door, is don't invite them in without a warrant. If they don't have a warrant, tell them to get a warrant, and have a nice day.
Question right here in the front, Jerry, and then come back here in the back.
Given your concealed carry and you're engaged in a gunfight, there's a number of enterprises out there that would suggest that you have legal representation. How important is that?
How much money you got in Chase Manhattan's or Chase Bank's coffers? If you shoot somebody justifiably, you may not have any legal costs incurred. You'll have a lot of other things that you'll incur because life sucks after you shoot somebody. The only thing good that happens after a defensive shooting is that you probably live another day. There are some insurance programs out there that I highly recommend. It's $100, $200 a year, and they cover you for up to X many hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it is what it is. If you want to look at a nightmare scenario of what can happen to you, just look southward to Florida to a guy by the name of George Zimmerman, who incurred probably between $500,000 and $1 million worth of legal fees, lost his job, lost his wife, lost his house, got kicked out of college, and there's a whole lot of people who'd like to see him dead to this day. All because he used his personal protection tool to shoot a young man that was mounted up on him in a full mount, bashing his head into the concrete. If, it was perfectly justified use of deadly force, but our political appointees and elected political officials decided to try to make some political hay out of it, and the next thing you know, it turns into a giant mess. So I encourage you to get some insurance, and, I like the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. We'll ask Mike here what he likes.
I'm a member of them. We pass out their brochures at every class we have, and I get an insurance policy with them for my family, and I'm also a member of the USCCA, and I have a policy through them just because I like my stuff, so I want to kind of keep my stuff. For those, I'll take 2 seconds to make a plug. Next month we have a class. It is called the Post-Shooting Aftermath. It is he was the prosecutor in Cook County for 10 years and Lake County for 18 years, and he is going to be teaching or doing a class/seminar on that very same thing of what happens after the fact and what's the prosecutor going to try to do, and how do you get out of making sure you're not arrested that night, because he says if you're arrested that night, that's where the trouble starts. So you got to go home that night. So that's kind of the gist of the seminar.
In the back.
Hi, I was just going to add to the assault rifle thing. I believe an assault rifle has to have select fire, and it's something that goes fully auto as one of the options. Assault weapon is a media term. There is no such real thing. A rock can be an assault weapon, for as far as things go.
Correct, and I try to, I tell people in our shop, they're only weapons, we don't use weapons. Police, the military, and bad guys use weapons. Everybody else uses a firearm, so I try to completely go away from the term weapon, because yes, a rock in a crime, if somebody hits you over the head and they're trying to steal your wallet, that rock became an assault weapon. I was listening to Rush Limbaugh probably about 6-7 months ago, and there was a lady on there that says, "I love you, Rush, because we play on words and we love to listen to you." And we knew she was a lesbian. The lady says the minute people started using the term civil marriage or gay marriage, the minute the society accepted the term, she says, we knew we had you. So words have meaning. So we try to not, try not to use the word weapon. I heard the gentleman say weaponry. Try to use just firearms. Even guns are looked at bad. Bad guys in the movies are using guns and weapons. Try to use the term firearms with your neighbors. Don't use the word weapon. A box cutter was a weapon. And I have several in my shop, and we open boxes, and they're utility knives where I work. So,
Question right over here.
I am a officer in a VFW post, and I have a FOID card, but occasionally we haul around 3 or 7 M1 rifles in the trunk of a car to go to somebody's funeral, and we do a 21 gun salute depending on how many veterans are there. Sometimes we'll use 3 M1s and fire 7 rounds each, or sometimes we'll have 7 guys with 7 M1s firing 3 rounds each. Do those other veterans participating in this, do they need FOID cards individually or not?
not if they're in your possession. You can take somebody, as long as you're there and somebody with a FOID card is right there. So you can take somebody else shooting all day long. That's exactly what I was saying to the police officer. So you're telling me I need a FOID card to show a gun. And he goes, well, no, not really, that whole story. And I said, so you're telling me I can go to the range, nothing stops me from having a drink with my neighbor, and we can be drinking beer all day, shooting guns. And there's no law that stops us from doing it. It's kind of not common sense, but that's not illegal. And you're saying just a patron in my shop has to have a FOID card. So in this case, as long as you are there and anybody with a FOID is in the vicinity, they don't have complete possession of the firearm.
But keep in mind, these are not real firearms. I mean, they're real M1s, but they've all been neutered. They've been fixed. You couldn't fire a real bullet.
Well, then they're not really a firearm, are they?
I mean, they fire blanks. But
that becomes a whole, when you're carrying, the law says as long as you have to put it in a bag or the trunk or make it inoperable. So if it's not if it's inoperable, then it's not really a firearm at that point.
These have all been made inoperable.
Okay. So they're not real.
They look like real guns, but they don't. They sound like real guns, but they can't fire.
This
anything
becomes
other than
again
a
where
blank.
you want to push the envelope.
Yeah.
I mean, legally in the state of Illinois, you can drive with your gun, magazine loaded, even if you don't have your concealed carry, in a shoebox on the passenger seat. That's completely legal. The police officer stopping you may not know what the law is. So you're not going to do jail time or anything, but you may be arrested not knowing what the laws are. So again, it becomes I would want some kind of documentation with that gun if I was carrying it without a FOID card, just to say that it's not a gun. Because you may end up going to the police station and having to explain it. You'll get, I mean, nothing will happen, but it's a lot of hassle.
Question over here, and then we'll come right here.
Okay, more stuff from the chat room. Carl Areza says he prefers to call his weapon a Homeland Security rifle. So that's his deal. Gina Ritako, I believe I'm saying that correctly. Hello, Gina. Thank you for watching online. She has two questions. One was very early. I think this was for you, John. Do you know the bill number of that gun control bill that only received 43 votes?
House Bill 1016, the Gun Dealer Licensing Act, or some quasi-name to that.
Excellent. Now that's on the record. And then her second question is, can you get a non-resident Illinois concealed carry license?
Residents of 4 states can get an Illinois concealed carry license as non-residents. If you don't live in one of those 4 states, you're out the $300 application fee. Sucks to be you. And the whole excuse that we've been given is that Illinois will not issue licenses to any state that does not keep a statewide database or registry of people who have voluntarily checked into inpatient mental health treatment facilities. That's the holdup. And most states don't require voluntary admissions to inpatient mental health treatment facilities to be reported to the respective state authorities. And that's where Illinois got the kind of thing in their craw. Now, there was some proposed rulemaking that would have allowed residents of all 57 states, 56 actually, to get carry licenses, 57 states according to Barack Obama. But the individuals would have to go to a psychologist and have them write a letter of reference saying that this individual has never checked into voluntary inpatient mental health treatment, and they would have to each year submit a similar letter to the state of Illinois to assure the state of Illinois they haven't gone bonky and checked themselves in for a little weekend stay at the crazy ward of the local hospital. So that's the holdup for non-residents from getting Illinois licenses. Again, it's just artificial barriers created. By and large, the people asking for these licenses or applying for these licenses are good people. They're not problematic individuals. And frankly, if they were problematic, the law will take care of them when they screw up. Give them the benefit of the doubt. We're innocent until proven guilty in this country, but with so many of the laws in the state of Illinois, it's almost as if they are just looking for reasons that you're, a criminal in the making. While at the same time, they won't charge real violent criminals with the crimes they're committing, and they turn them loose with misdemeanors or insignificant, or not even charging them at all.
Okay, question right here. Oh, okay, you're fine? Okay. Any more questions? We have time for another one if anybody has one. Okay, right, Lindsay, right here up front, Jim first, and then we'll go right to the back. And
I don't have a question, but I have an admiration for the courage and the intelligence and the competence and the communication skills that our speakers have shown tonight. It's a great. Thank you so much.
Question right there in the back.
Did you lose your guns shooting carp underwater?
No, I lost them when the boat turned over, and we were on my honeymoon, and two things happened on my honeymoon. In the city of Montgomery on the drive down, it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we stopped for gas at a gas station. And as we pulled up to the pump, I was paying attention to what's going on around me, and I told my wife, I said, that guy standing over there on the sidewalk in front of the gas station looks like he's up to no good. He was standing around without a sense of purpose. And that individual, when I got the credit card in and started pumping gas, he started walking towards me. He kept walking towards me with his hands inside his pants. He didn't say a word, looked right at me, was making a beeline straight at me. I recognized pre-violence indicators, and I asked him if I could help him, because initially I thought he was maybe an employee, and I screwed up. He got a little closer, and it was a Budweiser logo on his shirt, not the gas station logo. So at that point, I said, "Stay back." And he kept coming, and I said, "Stay back." And he still kept coming. So I looked around, put my hand on my gun, and I said, "Stay back." And at that point, he pulled his hands out of his pants and said, "Hey, man, you don't have to shoot me." And he walked laterally in front of the car. I couldn't surrender the car because my lovely bride was there, and she did not have a carry license. And so, I told him to go back, and he did. And I think I was fixing to be a victim. And that night when I was writing that up and I Googled that gas station, there was a wonderful YouTube video of what happens there on a Saturday night. And it was urban culture at its best, if you will. It was bad news. But during the day, it looked like just any old other gas station. But, I was the only Caucasian person there in a brand new car with a big old Garmin in the window, and it just screamed out of towner. This guy probably thought, hey, this is an easy peasy. He probably doesn't have a gun. He's not going to come back to testify if I get caught. This is an easy robbery. And, he had a little change of mind when I put my hand on the gun. And the other thing that happened on that trip was as we were driving over to the Pensacola Naval Air Station to see the museum there, somebody had sunk their boat, and I got a couple of pictures of it underwater up to halfway up the mast, and that was one of my pictures for boats and guns being lost.
I want to thank everybody for coming, thanking everybody online. Make sure we give our speakers here another round of applause, and I got a couple of things before we close.
I got to make sure that I pick up all the 4473s before I leave, so please nobody take them home.
We're passing out surveys. Please fill out the surveys. You can leave them on the table, or you can put them on the table in the back before you leave. That'd be great. That way we know how we're doing, anything you'd like to see, other events you'd like to see, anything like that. Remember, the envelopes are there if you'd like to donate to the Heartland Institute. Couple of quick reminders again. Next Monday, June 20th at 11:30 a.m. at the Union League Club in Chicago. Stephen Moore will be there. He is from the Heritage Foundation. He will be talking about his book, Fueling Freedom, Exposing the Mad War on Energy. And next Wednesday night here again, same time, we will have David Shatakis talking about his book, Constitutional Soundbites. So feel free to come back out again next Wednesday night. We'd love to see you all again. And that book talks about Americans' founding documents. Remember our benefit dinner with PJ O'Rourke coming up September 15th. Stop by the Red Dot table. Make sure you ask questions if you have any more specific questions that didn't get answered. And thank you all for coming, and let's give the speakers another round of applause.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.